How well's that April Fool's video done? Hello, we're back again. I thought I would show you another attractive woman. Now, the way you build the Shogun, obviously you can do the traditional high attack stat, you know, high crit rate, high crit damage. If you were to build her that way, you'd be alright, you know, you'd get away. I did that for a time when she came out. I decided to change her to energy recharge, just to see how it was for, you know. Why not something a little different if this is her whole gimmick? It's obviously made a lot easier if you have her weapon. I'll say this for any polearm I cover. If you like the character, but don't want to get their weapon, or haven't saved up for their weapon, any polearm character you want to use, any single one, whether it's the Shogun, Arlecchino, Zhongli, Toma, Rosaria, Sino, Zhao, Hu Tao, any polearm user will benefit from Staff of Homa if you're building them for a damage roll. If you aren't building them for a damage roll, you'd need to look elsewhere. There are plenty of 4-star options that will do you just fine. So if you're building the Shogun, you don't have her lightning weapon, I will give you a few options. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, really. Play and build the character how you want. That's how this game works, you know. If you want to have the best builds, go online, look them up. I'm happy with how my Shogun's built. If you're happy with your Shogun's built, great. If you're having fun, great. But that's not why you're here. You're here how to build the Shogun. But that's my viewpoint on how I think people should look at this game. You can follow the meta. The only thing that following the meta gets you is big number goes burr. And that's it. Artifacts. If you're building the Shogun for energy recharge, now that I've done it and I've seen the types of things that she can do, I would highly recommend. If you don't want to, if you think that's for little bitch beta soy boys, you're right, but listen. So let's go over teams. This is Babu Blade. I couldn't put Booba. Genshin is very strict on it. But this would be a team that I would view the Shogun being my main DPS. Not something I would typically do. If you're wanting to burst down your opponents, this is a very good team for it. You've got the Shogun as your main DPS. You've got Yelan as your sub DPS. These two have an amazing synergy with both of their ults. The Shogun has the ult and then follow-up attacks that are individual. This procs with Yelan's ult, which shoots out little water beads from the dice. You can have any buffer or support or anything else you want here. As for your healer, you can pick whoever you want. If you don't want a healer, don't have a healer. Not everyone uses a healer. It's entirely up to you. If you don't want to use Bennett, fair enough. You've got Farina. Farina will also buff your ult damage while her ult's up. Baijiu will always keep your team alive. Shinobu, if you're going for a more mono electro, or maybe you're changing a few elements, is good. If you want more reaction-based healing, you could go for Diona. Yao Yao if you wanted more dendro-based reactions. Everything here isn't fact, you know, I'm not telling you to build this team. If you don't have some of these people, you can substitute. I'm gonna hope you have the Shogun. For Yelan, if you want someone else, say you don't have her, you don't like her, you've not built her, substitute options could be Chilori. Although you would then run into the issue of Geo making crystals, not really any useful reactions. Got Yaimiko. Again, you're not getting many reactions off the two of them, so it would just be their flat damage, which is fairly high. You've got Farina, fairly good across the board, and a healer, as we said. You've got Dia, not great, but still a decent enough presence off field. You have Albedo, similar situation to Chilori. By any means, just go off, experiment. What works for you works for you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you're having fun running the Shogun, fucking, I don't know, Geo Traveler, Sucrose, and then Diona, go nuts. But anyway, enough rambling. Let's see the team, see how it functions, see what we can do. In other words, I'm going to the showcase plant. Alright, so we're here at the showcase plant. I made sure to give everyone the ults, just so we could not have to faff around potentially killing this thing before we do anything, because it's the toughest enemy in the game. So rotation is going to be quite simple. We're basically just trying to get a little crystal gone first before we do anything, and we'll do this however you want. So
here comes the catch. Teamwork is dreamwork. Storm the front. Torn to oblivion.
And 168,000 from one attack. Now, bearing in mind, we have 7 more seconds of an onslaught from our swings and our Yelan's little bullets. So, I can't really say how much damage that would be, but I'm gonna say quite easily over 200k and then some. And yeah, that's not as much as people's Ambers doing like a mil, but why do you need that much damage? But this team does thrive off of doing like little burst segments of damage. You know, as you saw, we had a lot more damage still to come out. It is very short-lived, but it is a lot of damage coming out at once. One thing is to always bear in mind as well, just while I'm setting up for the next boss, your damage won't always match what the damage you see of everyone on YouTube or wherever you watch your build stuff. It will never always match up, because your builds will never be the exact same unless you have some fucking super crazy luck. You'll be hitting similar numbers, but you'll never hit the same numbers unless your build numbers are exactly the same, and I'm meaning down to everything. In a normal environment, you wouldn't really go and beat up enemies to get your ults. Maybe you do. I don't. This is just for showcase purposes. But anyway, onto a boss that might actually withstand a few hits. Alright, so we're here with the little fucking illusionary Illuminati bitch. It's a recently tanky boss. The only downside is there's a lot of waiting while you kind of just hang about. Just have to wait for his little Beyblades to let him rip. I fucked this up, but we'll do this. We'll do this. We'll pop the ult. And we'll do the damage. So as you can see, these two complement each other very nicely, as we have just shredded this boss's HP. Even though I fucked up the rotation, the fact that I had Kujo-Sara's ult did allow me to correct that. But if you don't have her ult and you have fucked it, tough tits, bro. The main weakness of this team, again being a burst kind of team, is in longer fights. If you can't kill the boss relatively quickly, your damage will slow down quite a lot. You don't need everything going. If you can get at least one of your buffs up, probably just the Shogun's ult, and she would be your main DPS, you'd be alright. But I'll give you another option, a team I like to run her on. So the team I like to run the Shogun on, using her as like a sub DPS / battery for the team. Neuvillette is your main DPS, Shogun is your sub DPS / battery, Kazuha is your crowd control and slight buffer as well, and Bennett is your healer / buffer. The rotation, relatively straightforward. The Shogun complements Neuvillette's abilities quite well. So since this is a video about the Shogun, I'm not going to go too in depth on what these 3 others do. You already know a little bit about Bennett since I spoke about him earlier. This is the Shogun in a more back-end role, off-field mostly. Let's see how she does. So you would go in, throw your E. That's usually how you'd start the fight most of the time anyway. You can pick up Bennett's fire or the Shogun's electricity. It's entirely up to you. I like to pop Neuvillette's E first and then his ult. While you're dealing with the balls created with his ult, you've then got, fucking bitch, his E coming off of cooldown. Usually by the time you've done all 3, you'll have that off of cooldown. And with these two, you are able to get your electro reactions and stuff. If you can somehow make cores, like this boss is making cores, you can utilize them. And because it's AoE explosion, you can hit those cores that the boss is making, which is quite nice. And let's say you want to just finish things off, get your ults back up, or just kill it, never mind. But the idea there is, say you're finishing up the enemies, or you've got your full resolve, you know, you can build your ults back up. That would have got Kazuha's ult back up, and that would have got Bennett's ult back up. This team is rather, it forms a nice circle. By the time you finish with all of Neuvillette's stuff, from the amount of particles and reactions and energy that you've generated, the Shogun's bar will be rather full, if not full, so it feeds into itself quite nicely. I'll just put this at the end of the video, and we're going to quickly go over the Shogun's kit. My thoughts on the character. I won't insult your intelligence, this is why this is at the end of the video. If you're wanting to build the Shogun, I'm gonna at least respect that you have a basic understanding of what the Shogun does. I won't tell you how to play her, I won't tell you how to run her, I will only tell you what I've done and what she can do with what I've done. I'm not saying you need to do this and do that to get the best damage in the game. Fuck off. The Shogun is a good burst DPS character. Her physical attacks are a bit of a letdown. Just her standard combo, you know, bit of a letdown. but her E makes up for it. The I, with its constant electric attacks, can make up for the fact that she's doing just physical damage during her downtime. It doesn't change too much, but it's a nice little boost. It helps her stand out a bit, and in co-op, if you're playing that, or whenever they add something for it, she'll be very good for that, because it applies to all of your teammates. So, if you have 4 of you doing it, and say you're fighting like a weekly boss or whatever, you've got a Shogun, all 4 of those eyes have separate procs, so you can trigger your proc, someone can trigger theirs, someone can trigger theirs, and someone can trigger theirs. So you can get technically 4 strikes very quickly, and it can rack up in damage. It can turn even the quieter sections of your DPS on a boss to a relatively good standard, and it'll turn your damage on the actual damage section on the bosses up even higher. Her ult functions mainly in 2 ways. Main way number 1 is the damage. It is a very high damaging ult with a lot of payoff, a lot of synergy, and is very good at hitting multiple people. You're not just locked to one person, because she does the sword swing, and then there's a big sweep of electricity as well that can hit enemies behind. If you do a charged attack, she'll sheath the blade and bring it out, and will basically create like a smaller box in front of her that will hit multiple enemies. The second thing is the fact that she is a pseudo battery for the team. When you use her ult, every enemy you hit will generate 2.5 energy for every single person on your team. That can be your co-op partners or any allies that you've got off field. It also includes her. If you have her weapon, it synergizes very well, because your weapon, when you pop your ult, increases your energy recharge for a time, which is useful for the ult's damage, because she scales off of energy recharge, and the fact that you'll get more energy back from it, because it acts as a multiplier. Very niche, but still very useful. She effectively halves the costs of all swords and polearms stuff. It's alright. It's not the worst, you know, it could be like suspicious cooking. You know, it's not the worst. Speaking of cooking, she can't cook. If you take her to any place where you can cook, it says this character is unable to cook. Why the internet makes a big meme out of it, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't cook with the characters who don't have cooking benefits. If I didn't have any, then I suppose it would be a bit of an issue. But I do, so I don't. My thoughts on the Shogun. Despite her being 2 years old, she still does a lot. She brings a lot to every team that she fits in. She'll fit in any Dendro team, so you can get your electro reactions. She'll fit in any team that you want to do numbers, because numbers go burr, because she'll make you do more numbers. She struggles a little bit without reactions, I would say. I'd say her weakest team is a team heavily dominated by crystallizing geo characters. You could get away with her on Navia's team, because Navia wants kinda to be with different elements, although you can still shove her on a mono team and she'll fuck. I think the Shogun, despite being 2.5 years old, is still a very good character. She brings a lot to the team. She does a lot of damage. She supports the team in a very unique way, which is hard to replace. My only gripe being the fact that her physical attack is a bit of a letdown. Although that's just... it's a problem most DPS characters have, is if they aren't doing their elemental damage type, they do start to fall off quite quickly. But she can negate it a bit, which is quite nice. My preferred role for her is the sub DPS. You can have her as your main DPS, you could have her just off field, you don't even like using her ult. Fair enough, it's whatever, build her how you want. I really like her on the Nouvellette team that we saw. It really does do a lot of damage. They work quite well together. They do synchronize very well. If you don't want her on a Nouvellette team, pair her with Yelan if you have her. Great combo. Fucking melts a very good chunk of the game. I'm not too fond of her in Spiral Abyss, mainly because the enemies are so spread out, so you would need something like some animal character to try and group them together, and it's not always possible. You're not always fighting enemies that can be pulled about, so it's a bit iffy. But if I was to use her in Spiral Abyss, once again, I'd make that Nouvellette team and just have them sweep. But yeah, that was the Boobalicious Raiden Shogun with the Booba Blade. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to see more of this. Let me know who you want to see. Feel free to check out some of my more normal content. This is something a little different. Thought I'd try something a little different since the last one went down quite well. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment if you want me to start doing this for Star Rail or Destiny or anything you've seen me play on the channel. If it's something you want me to do, let me know below. I'll see what I can do for you, just for you. Thanks for watching. When in doubt, grab the Booba Blade, because that shit fucks.